Mr. Chairman, we're live.
Good, how are you?
Thank you.
Good. Good to see you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's maybe come to order here. And if we could start with a roll call on the committee.
Senator Barlow.
Present.
Senator Boner.
Here.
Senator Landon.
Excused, he's at Capitol Facilities.
Senator Scott.
Here.
Representative Chadwick.
Here.
Representative Haroldson.
Here.
Representative Harshman.
Excused.
Representative Knapp.
Here.
Representative Newsom. Here. Representative Ottman.
Excused.
Representative Wiley.
Here.
Representative Yin.
Excused.
Co-Chairman Olson.
Here.
Co-Chairman Case.
Present, thank you. Well, Mr. Chairman, welcome to this side of the building and welcome to all our good friends from the House. It's good to see everybody again. It seems like the interim was so fun last time and I missed you. I really truly did. So the chairman and I have talked and we think it might be the most expeditious way would be to allow for public comment, hear from our elected officials and then our agencies and then the general public. And there are many, many specific topics on the list. I'm hoping we can end up more with broader groupings like we did last time. We have some unfinished work from last time and maybe some work we did that we want to revisit because we didn't have some success. But with that, Mr. Co-Chairman, with your leave, why don't we start with the Secretary of State's office? I saw that they were here. You guys got the last seats in the House, but welcome. Tell us what you'd like to do in the interim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Welcome.
So to my right, I'm Chuck Gray, the Wyoming Secretary of State, and then to my right, we of course have Joe Rubino, our Policy Director and Counsel, and to my left is Colin Crossman, the Director of our Business Division. So I would bring your attention to page 4, which is our first request, preventing potential abuses of Wyoming's corporate filing system, which would be an examination of potential statutory amendments to Wyoming statutes related to corporate entity formation to prevent potential abuses of Wyoming's corporate filing system by foreign entities. This was something we talked about last year, and I think the committee ultimately decided to go down a different route. But we do have concerns about potential abuses. Obviously, the CTA has been the federal approach on that. There's been a lot of concerns justifiably on that. And the direction of that was actually declared unconstitutional here last week in a circuit in the southeastern part of the United States. So stay tuned on that. I think it would be good for us to update on that as well. But in terms of Wyoming statute, that's one of the focuses we would like to have with the committee. And with that, I'd like to yield to Mr. Crossman with your permission.
Absolutely.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Crossman.
So there's a lot of things that we can do to tighten up our statutes. We would just like, I think, a broad overview and ways to handle that, to address abuses and I guess stepping ahead to the next one, fraudulent filings. It's all kind of part and parcel of the same concept.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Back to you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the next one, I think the difference is a little bit going broader than potential foreign entities. There are several areas where we can tighten up our business legislation to address clear deficiencies which may allow fraudulent filings to occur. For example, improving regulations related to annual reports of all entities, providing for regulation of third-party organizers who are not also commercial registered agents, and examining other areas where fraudulent activity needs to be addressed. And with your permission, I'd like to just yield briefly to Mr. Crossman on that.
You bet. Go right ahead.
In this one, specifically, that we have seen issues where people have been filing documents using fraudulent identities, and we would like some authority to address that. We don't currently have the powers to investigate or address that. And while we have some capacity to cancel entities that we have been informed by the public have been fraudulent, that doesn't extend to other entities that we suspect might be related, but without some sort of a complaint, we can't act on those.
Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, if we could move to page 6 and stay on our business entity requests. Potential legislation related to trade names and trademarks, which would be a look into aligning the role of the Secretary of State's Business Division related to the registration of trade names and trademarks with those related to entities registered under Title 17. Trade names and trademarks both possess differing standards for internal review than entities registered under Title 17. To elaborate a little bit on that, could I yield to Mr. Crossman? Mr. Crossman, go briefly?
You bet.
All right, so this one, since I've been here, I've noticed a series of discontinuities between how naming is handled in business entities versus trade names and trademarks. Specifically, trade names is of more concern to me than trademarks, but I think that looking at them both together makes sense. For instance, if someone were to get a name of a corporation in a less than valid way, we have the authority to step in and deny that name, regulate it, ask them to change it, all sorts of things up to and including full cancellation. With a trade name, even if we have absolute evidence that there were some shenanigans being played in getting that name, or there was a problem with it, it must go to a court. We have no authority to act internally, which given how rapidly moving names can be, seems like a bit of an issue when somebody can effectively hack our system by doing the activity on the trade name side where we have no authority to step in and solve the problem, versus if they do it just with the name of an LLC and we have some capacity to do it without having to involve the court system.
Okay, thank you. Keep going.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Switching to elections now, our first request is looking at the unaffiliated filing petition threshold and deadlines, which would be an examination of the petition filing period for unaffiliated candidates. There's quite a bit of activity in the last cycle and already in this cycle in terms of the unaffiliated petition filing period and the threshold. I do think a closer examination of both the threshold requirement and the timing requirement for unaffiliated candidates to be placed on the ballot is something that I think is ripe for review. Of course, 22-5-307 sets the filing deadline as not less than 70 days before a general election. This raises uniformity questions, as well as concerns that it lets people game the process to run as an independent candidate depending on who won the primary. And depending on the year, sometimes it provides 2 weeks after the primary for circulating independent petitions, and some years it's been 1 week. And I think aligning that, and thinking about when that should be, would be one possible reform. Then you have 22-5-304, which currently sets the signature threshold at 2% of votes cast in the last general election, varying slightly by statewide partisan office, countywide partisan office, and legislative district, which compared to other states is pretty low, and I think would ask the committee to at least look at that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Anything else?
2 more notes. Mr. Chairman, would like to bring back the third-party interference in elections bill, which was tabled in the House committee, and there was a note about, just talking with Representative Wiley about that, about bringing that back in the interim. And then, Mr. Chairman, the final one is post-election audits, which would be an examination of Wyoming's current post-election audit procedures as allowed by Wyoming statute and possibly expanding on those procedures. Of course, Senate File 153, brought by Senator Boner, would put in place Wyoming Statute 22-6-130, which considered that post-election ballot audit and codified existing practices. I do think this was a great important step for post-election audits. However, there is little in state statute which discusses the mechanics of post-election audit procedures, and I think a closer examination of post-election audit procedures, as well as a comparison to what other states do for post-election audit procedures, would be beneficial. And there's also been considerable public appetite for the possibility of post-election audits to be performed manually. And the statute right now, there's some questions about that process. So I think a closer examination into those procedures, as well as comparisons to other states, would be beneficial and fruitful.
Thank you. Is that all of your topics?
Yes.
Let's see if the committee has any questions. Co-chairman, the rest of the committee, any questions? Thank you so much. You bet. Let's go to our agencies next. Shall we do public service commissions, since there's more of them? And then we'll do insurance. Welcome, commissioners, Madam Chairwoman. How are you guys today? Great.
Good, thank you, except I went to the wrong room, so I apologize for,
Can you pull that closer, Madam Chairwoman?
I just apologize that I went to the wrong room.
You're okay. You're perfect. Your timing's perfect. The floor is yours.
Okay, I think I will turn it over to Deputy Chairman Petrie to discuss the 911 topic first.
Okay. Mr. Deputy Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This topic request is presented because of
Deputy
The
Petrie,
cur-
if you could point us in the packet to.
That'd be good.
Oh,
what
I'm
page
sorry.
number this is at, so we can all get on the same page with you.
It's like page 15.
It's page 16.
16.
16?
Thank you.
I thought this would be
Apologize for that,
3
Mr.
pages,
Chairman.
you guys. I really did. 16. Deputy Chairman Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for the delay there. As the telecommunications sector has been more and more lightly regulated over the years, we have noted that the reporting of 911 service outages is unreliable, I guess I would say. They generally get reported somehow. We often learn about a 911 outage by contact from the office of, or from the Department of Homeland Security, or the Office of Homeland Security, rather. And there is also a transition underway in the 911 emergency services world to a later generation, a more elaborate and effective version of 911. There are costs associated with that. That is another aspect of this. Our understanding is that the current funding mechanism, which is a cap on the 911 surcharge imposed by the local governing authority, is likely insufficient to support the future needs of the 911 operations in the local governing authorities. And we do not want to find ourselves in a situation where it's not understood that the potential sunset of the Telecommunications Act would potentially leave some holes that might need to be filled as far as obligations for reporting, who is to receive those reports, what the criteria would be for making a report. And we just thought that this would be a good addition to the Telecommunications Act sunset discussion to make sure that we devote some focus to what we're doing with 911 service and what those arrangements should and will be.
Thank you. Do you have other topics you want to talk about? Maybe we should do all the topics and then have the committee ask questions at that point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second topic that we submitted is pretty much a continuation of your electricity discussion with some proposed slight modifications. First, I would propose that we add a discussion of affordability to the conversation, and whether the PSC has the proper tools, and secondarily, whether there's really a safety net in Wyoming for utility expenses. And the reason I propose this is twofold. First, even though Wyoming enjoys some of the lowest rates in the country, and we expect that to continue, there is upward pressure on utility rates from inflation and everything else, particularly on electricity rates. And but I suppose the primary reason that I wanted to bring it forward to you is because of the public comment we received during the rate case for our major utility. I know many of you attended those public comment hearings or probably watched them online, and affordability was a big topic, particularly from those who are on fixed incomes. So I think there are some statutes in place for low-income rates in other states. I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm just saying that there are options out there that we could explore. And then I proposed removing the certificated territory discussion that was included last year because we've agreed with the stakeholders to pursue rulemaking on that topic. And so I believe that, we're headed for a solution there. And then finally, we really did not have time last year to get in depth on regional issues, and maybe some more education on that front would be helpful to the committee.
And by regional, you mean the West, kind of?
The West,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Excellent. All right.
which is big, as you know.
Yeah. Committee, any questions for the Public Service Commission? Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman.
Let's get your microphone on. We've got to find the right one. Hang on. They're working on it. There it goes. They're all lit up.
Mr. Chairman, the 911 question. You're talking about where the 911 service is generally available, or where it's unavailable to individuals because of our gradual loss of universal telephone service.
It's fun how he spun that around, isn't it? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Petrie.
Senator Scott, what we're talking about here with this proposal to specifically address this over the interim is the provision of service to the PSAPs. So the provision of service to the public safety answering points, which are your local dispatch operations. And so when there's a problem with the service at the PSAP in any area, or even on a broader scale, could be statewide or regional, that is the type of outage reporting and related issues that we're talking about. The individual telephone being out and a customer not being able to reach their emergency services locally is an issue, but it's not exactly what we're talking about here.
Okay. Anybody else, questions for the commission? Thank you very much. We'll be seeing a lot of you, I'm sure. Mr. Rude. Welcome, Commissioner. It's good to see you.
Good to be seen. Mr. Chairman, committee members, I'm Jeff Root. I'm the Insurance Commissioner. We have two topics here on pages 17 and 18 that we're proposing. The first and by far the most important is an update to what we call the Holding Company Act. This is fairly complex and heady material, but we routinely do updates to it. We did them in 2013 and 2019. Very briefly, a holding company will have 20 companies underneath it, and one will be an insurer. We need the ability to look at the other companies in the Holding Company Act that interact with the insurer, so that if one should fail, there's not a domino effect harming the insurer. So that's what that will address. We anticipate maybe 2 sessions of 1 hour, hopefully. The second bill would be a general cleanup bill, and this is something we just gotten input back from industry and what we, in a few areas we need to clean up with definitions or address certain things. And we think that might take 2 sessions of 30 minutes each. So with that, I'll happily answer any questions.
Okay. Questions for the commissioner? Any questions for the commissioner? Thanks, Commissioner. We look forward to working with you. Let's do any elected people back there in the back. I see Representative Stith, welcome. And then we'll open it up for general public comment. Oh, I see. Okay, gotcha. We'll get you next, Representative. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, we got all sorts of representatives out there. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. On the top of page 3, I've submitted one proposed topic. It's a discrete problem that arises when you have a corporate entity that does not file its annual reports for 2 years, typically out of inadvertence. That LLC, for example, might own land, but because there's no mechanism to be reinstated if you've let it lapse for 2 years, then you've got this land or build a commercial building, for example, that's now owned by an entity that doesn't exist. And we don't have a nice clear statement in statute of what that really means. And what can happen is because the name is then available to anyone, it can and does happen that someone else will take the exact same name, form a new LLC, and then if you just look at the documents, it looks like this new LLC that's owned by different people has now become the owner of this commercial building, right? The Supreme Court has on the edges intimated that the old LLC still exists and can still assign away its property to other live entities or individuals, but there's not a real, the Supreme Court didn't really state that perfectly clearly, and so you have disagreement among lawyers around the state of what the status is. So I think it's just a cleanup item. I don't think you necessarily have to do big changes to state law, just have a mechanism of what happens to a dead entity that, with its property, who owns it? You could, and there are various choices you could have, but right now it's kind of just uncertain what the answer is.
Okay. Any questions for the representative? Thank you. That sounds like a good topic.
Thank you.
Doable. Representative Cheswick. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have 2 topics that I've submitted. They're right on page 1. The first one's a bigger lift. The second one's fairly easy. The first one is the idea that we need to, election integrity has been a big topic that you've covered many times and will probably continue to work on in the next interim. And one of the things that I have been working on is to ensure that election administration is done in a nonpartisan way. Right now, the Elections Department is in the Office of the Secretary of State, which is an office that is elected at a partisan election. And I think if there's any department in government which needs to be nonpartisan, it should be the Elections Department. We need to have a complete nonpartisan administration over elections. So my proposal is to place the Elections Department into the department, under the supervision of the Board of Elections, which has currently 4 members. But I would, and the key feature, the key part of my proposal would be to add a 5th member to that board who would be guaranteed to be a member of not the majority party. So if there's a majority of one party among the 4 elected officials, then the 5th member would be a member of a different party, independent, minority party, whatever. But mostly to ensure that there is at least a watchdog, a whistleblower, somebody who's going to be in the election board to watch over things. And that's really the key piece is having that a nonpartisan, the minority member of the elections board. It would be a 5-member board then, also, so you wouldn't have to worry about ties on votes. And that's my proposal. And I can take questions on that one, or I can go to the next one.
Let's skip both of them just to be expeditious, and then we'll come back.
The second one is one you're familiar with. It's an easier topic, political expenditures. We've talked about this at the last 2 interims, and thank you, the committee has endorsed this idea twice now as a committee bill. The first time it died in the House on 3rd reading, on the Senate on 3rd reading. Last interim, you introduced it, you adopted it as a committee bill, and we brought it to the floor of the House, and it failed the introduction vote, but it did gain a majority. It was a 35-26 vote, so it has a lot of support, and without that 2/3 vote, it would have gone to the floor and hopefully passed. So I think there's a lot of support for it, and I would just like to bring it back. That should not take much time at all, take maybe an hour tops of your committee time, but I'd like to try and get that going again as another committee bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see if there's questions. Any questions for the representative? Any questions? Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Representative Locke's out there somewhere? Oh, back there. Welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. My request is on kind of the bottom of page 3, and I'll hit this really quickly. The concept here is in terms of when the utilities make rate request increases and just kind of making sure that they're fair and reasonable. I am proposing just an interim topic. I don't think this is something that should take a huge amount of time, but the concept here is that we have this typical situation with most of the utilities. They come in, perfect example is the one that happened recently. They came in looking for a very high percent, knowing they were going to get some lower percent. What I'm proposing here is considering some alternatives that might incentivize them to come in with a sharper pencil and come in and be reasonable with their requests. The commission, of course, worked very hard and does work very hard to come in and say, you know, what's fluff and what's real. And they do put a lot of work into that. So I'm just proposing maybe an interim topic where we discuss options to incentivize them, come in with that sharper pencil, be reasonable, make it easier on the commission, make it more reasonable for the people, and really consider what's a critical rate request and what's not. I stand for questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions for Representative Locke? Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Are there any other representatives or senators out there? Then I think that appropriately the next one would be to go to our local elected officials or their associations. Anybody from WHAM or the assessors, the clerks, the county governments? Okay, Let's go to individuals. Let's just start, work in the room. Please raise your hand. Ms. Levin, you start. Are you part of a group of industry that we could bring the others up or not?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if any of my industry colleagues intend to
Okay.
join, but maybe. Here we go. Here's one.
Okay,
Mr.
let's,
Chairman,
that would just be more, you don't have to be on the same page, but it's just a little easier. Ms. Levin.
Mr. Chairman, Jody Levin on behalf of Charter and Verizon. The request that I submitted is under both of the co-chairs' names. It's found on page 10 and again on page 18. This is just a continuation of last year's request to do a 2-year study on the Telecommunications Act, which is set to sunset July 1, 2025, unless the body takes action. There has been good cooperation across industry to begin these conversations. We've been high level involved, the PSC in that. Our intent is to include the PSC, the OCA in those discussions as well, and then bring ideas forward to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Anything for Ms. Levin? Thank you, Ms. Levin.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Lance?
Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Haroldson, Representative Haroldson,
Thank
please.
you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, not so much a question, just you said page 10 and I'm not seeing it right off.
Page 8.
Page 8. That's my fault. Thank you.
It's okay. Yeah, it's a. Got it?
Apologies for that, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's do Ms. Lance and then Mr. Pickard. Ms. Lance, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Beth Lance on behalf of AT&T. We too join in this request for an interim topic. Obviously, with the sunset date, we are interested in looking more closely at the Telecommunications Act and the future of it. Although all of us in industry may not have necessarily the same position on its future, but certainly AT&T seeks to be involved.
Certainly. Questions from Ms. Lance? Mr. Pickard.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Dave Pickard, representing Lumen. And we too appreciate the committee taking up this topic because of the sunset date that is looming in the middle of 2025. We stand ready to have discussions much like we did earlier in the previous interim. We'll work with the committee, our colleagues in the industry. I would say that Ms. Lance is correct. There are some diverse views, but I really think this is the time to move forward and get something on the books that is going to be, better than an 8-year-old act. I would also, while I have the microphone, I would like to address the Public Service Commission's comments on 911. As Lumen is the main provider of 911 services in Wyoming, we're intimately aware of the outages that have occurred and the reporting challenges. We're, I think it's on a monthly basis with the Public Safety Communications Commission that is run out of YDOT. Encourage any of you that are interested in the topic of Next Gen 911 to join in. Those meetings are available online as well. But we stand ready to have a robust discussion about 911 in Wyoming as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Pickard? Thank you all very much. Who else would like to address the committee? Mr. Winnie. And just by way of telegraphing what we're doing, I'm not sure of the House's schedule, but we're going in at 10.
Yeah.
We typically like to break about a quarter till, give us a little time. We're old and our knees aren't so good. It takes us a long time to go upstairs, Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. With regard to Representative Locke's bill on power generation utility rates, I well understand energy, power generation, steam plants, maintenance, repair, and so on. I've run budgeting in the Pentagon for similar things, although I wouldn't claim to have a businessman's sense of those things. But what I would offer you is you look forward to the Kemmerer nuclear plant. The legislature needs to have an eye to windward, because when you get into nuclear power generation, that issue of we've got to make a profit, you got to think about that very carefully. Now, certainly the business needs to remain in business, but the typical thing about making profits in a power plant, power generation, is just different with nuclear energy. Because the design and construction of the plant is critical. A poor design was a Chernobyl plant in Russia. It was a design that never would have been built in this country. But it shows you what can happen if you aren't paying attention to certain aspects of a nuclear plant. Subject to your questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winning. Any questions for Mr. Winning? Thank you very much, sir. Who else? Please, get your hands up fast. Welcome. Former mayor.
There we go. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I am Marion Smith. I am the Public Policy Director for the National Insurance Crime Bureau. Happy to be here and kind of introduce ourselves to you, but really want to second Commissioner Rood's request to update our Insurance Act. One of the reasons we really need to do so is Wyoming remains the only state that does not have mandatory fraud reporting for insurance. Our organization is a 110-year-old kind of crime-fighting organization. We work very closely with local law enforcement, fire inspectors regarding possible and probable fraud investigations. And we do really well all across the country with the exception of Wyoming. And so we would ask you to take into consideration mandatory fraud reporting from your insurance carriers. This would be nothing new to them. We tend to hold them harmless when it comes to reporting to the insurance commissioner possible fraud suspect cases, which of course tend to increase all of our rates at home. So anything that we can do to combat crime, and again, we'd be happy to work with the commissioner and his department. Certainly being last means we don't have to reinvent the wheel. North Dakota is probably a state that we would work with the commission to look forward to kind of mirroring their legislation, but would be happy to answer any questions, but it's nice to be here and see you all again and introduce you to our organization.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Smith? So the legislation you're proposing, Ms. Smith, is it would require carriers potentially to report fraud, is that correct? Is that the way I understand it?
Yes,
Okay,
correct.
okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Let's get, I want to be expeditious about how we handle public comment, because I would love to get everybody's public comment. I don't want to cut people off.
Thank
Ms.
you,
Herman,
Mr. Chairman,
welcome.
Committee. Marguerite Herman, I'm here for the League of Women Voters. I requested two topics, and I'll be brief on both. On page 14 is online registration, and just say 42 other states use this for voter registration. And I think it would be worth studying that in their interim. Every registration ends up digital anyway, and so we perceive that it would achieve efficiencies in the process. If there's a problem with the registration, that it would become immediately apparent instead of paper, traveling, input, and then being checked. So as far as efficiency and speed, it would be, we think, although the interim study would indicate that, I think it'd be superior. And also, and access to rural people who have to find a notary otherwise, who might not have transportation, and informal comments, informal conversations I've had about remote communities and people on, say, the Wind River Reservation. The perception is that this might make it much easier for people to register to vote, to participate in our government. And so I think it's worth looking at the 42 states and their experiences and what they're doing. If there are security problems, what are those? If not, because paper has its own security issues too, aside from the human error of handling and all the mid processes that involves. So what we're asking for is a study to look at what other states are doing, what efficiencies, security, and access that might improve for the state. And the other thing that we're asking is on page 6. It's open primaries. There are two very different processes for voting, especially in the primaries this season, which opens very soon. And I think looking at this again, I know the legislature, corporations looked at it a couple of years ago, open primaries and a bunch of other things, ranked choice voting. I know you look at all of that, and just to get those out, dust them off, make sure they're accurate, up to date, and have them ready to go if problems emerge unforeseen from the changes. And if you want to take a look at it, it'll be there. And actually, just a little correction, I put 3 hours down there. It probably would take about 1 hour. And LSO could take what you have, look at states, have states who have open primaries, have they changed it? Have they gotten rid of it? Are there problems? Just to make it accurate and up to date and then ready for if the committee chooses to take that up, if you see perceived problems come to your attention, it would just be there and ready to go. And so those are two things that I can't predict what your conclusion will be, but I think it's good to be up to date on those two things, the online registration and open primaries.
Thank you, Ms. Herman. Questions for Ms. Herman? Thank you very much. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Tom Laycock with AARP Wyoming. We're a membership organization supporting people age 50 over and their sore knees. As we consider the importance of election integrity in Wyoming, we believe it's important to understand who's trying to influence us as voters. Equally important is to answer the question of who's trying to solicit our campaign donations. We believe policymakers should require greater transparency, clarity, and honesty in all election advertising. This year's House Bill 39 started down the road of offering transparency of the question of who's attempting to influence our vote. We'd like to see the committee continue those efforts with the Secretary of State's office to help protect our citizenry by helping voters understand the causes they're donating to. Mr. Chairman, voting means something to our members. As you're aware, 2/3 of all the votes cast in the 2022 election came from voters age 50 and over. What you may not know is older Americans donate to campaigns at a high level as well. In 2020, a New York Times investigation found half of all the donations processed by a firm specializing in campaign contributions for one of two major political parties came from those who listed their occupation as retired. Deceptive campaign solicitation disproportionately affects older adults. One analysis found older adults were more likely to receive refunds of campaign contributions than younger people, a sign they feel they've been deceived. People 70 and older in that study received more than 4 times as many refunds as those under the age of 50. It's our hope that greater transparency in the arena of campaign finance will lead to lessened deceptive or misleading political messaging and fundraising practices. It's our belief there's no election integrity without transparency of election advertising and other electioneering or financial solicitation efforts. We also believe shedding light on who's asking for our vote and our financial support will cut down on deceptive solicitations and provide the Secretary of State, our AG's office, and local prosecutors greater ease in chasing out bad actors. With that, I stand for questions.
Questions for
Thank you.
Tom? Thank you very much. Who's next?
I can go next. Can you hear me?
Pull it closer. Speak up.
Sorry.
Use your big voice.
I know, I'm a quiet talker, so I apologize. Good morning, members of the committee and Chairman Case. My name is Marissa Carpio. I'm with the Quality State Policy Center. We're a 501c3 nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to advancing fair elections and transparent government. Today, I ask for your consideration for an interim study on campaign finance and campaign disclosures in Wyoming. Our state's commitment to free and fair elections is facing significant challenges. Expenditures by state legislative candidates have more than doubled over the past decade, while recent court cases have highlighted vague language in our reporting requirements. Anonymous mailers potentially funded by out-of-state donors further obscure our transparency our democracy relies on. 2 failed bills this session, HB 39, House Joint Resolution 2, which you are both of those which you are familiar with. I think we should reintroduce that into this study as well as look at any gaps, hear from county clerks and other experts on how we manage and navigate campaign finance in our state. So thank you for your attention. I'm eager to work with you all on this matter, and I can now stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the Policy Center? Any questions? Thank you very much.
Gail
Ms.
Simmons, Civics 307. I believe that you have an interim topic on all of these, but of the 5 committee-sponsored bills on elections that came in from the committee, Of those, 3 failed intro, 1 died in committee of the whole, and 1 died in committee. And my request is simply that you continue the hard work that was done by this joint committee, as well as the various individuals who spent hours across several meetings last year. Bring these back up, and in a short amount of time for any changes to those, and again, sponsor those as corporations or committee bills without the additional hurdle of having to have 2/3 introduction. So that's House Bill 37, 38, 39, 41, and 42.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Questions for Ms. Simmons? Thank you very much. Who else would like to address the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, back to you.
Sorry about that. I realized I should have brought up both of my interim topics. So the first
Okay,
one I
I'm sorry.
mentioned, no, that was my fault. So Chairman Case, members of the committee, this next topic is on page 12. Today I ask for you to reconsider House Bill 37, which you discussed over the 2023 interim. Recent research reveals a disturbing trend. 1 in 6 election workers face threats while carrying out their duties. With incidents of intimidation on the rise, despite existing felony offenses existing in our statute for election intimidation, House Bill 37's crucial misdemeanor addition was not implemented in time for the 2024 election. Our democracy hinges on the dedication of those election workers, yet their safety remains in jeopardy. This committee's consideration is paramount in ensuring the safety and efficiency of our electoral processes. I suggest that we explore statutory changes and provide future protections, but especially bring that House Bill 37 back before future elections. So thank you for your attention and your consideration of this matter. I can now stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions regarding this issue? We're good. Ms. Lance? Yeah, fill in the chairs, people. That'd be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Beth Lance, Wyoming Trial Lawyers. We have brought a proposed interim topic to request a review of Wyoming's auto insurance minimum limits. This is a place in statute where the actual current fixed minimum coverage amount is only $25,000. And I think we can all imagine that that is quite insufficient by today's monetary standards, particularly considering the inflation that has occurred in recent years. But this has not been updated in more than 30 years. And so it is certainly something that we think is worth looking at to help protect Wyoming citizens and our consumers in the state, with a state that's quite rural and without very much public transportation. I can imagine probably 99.9% of your constituents drive cars. And so this essentially would affect everyone. There has been some recent action on this. 14 states have recently raised their minimum coverage. And so this is happening all over the nation, that this is being examined. Currently, Iowa, Nebraska, and New Jersey are also considering to raise these limits. So we would just request time this interim to look at this and request this committee to determine what would actually be a reasonable and fair amount for this minimum coverage.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Lance? Did you pitch it to transportation too? Just asking?
No, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Well, we will have insurance here, so yes, Ms. Shaner, are you part of this?
Mr. Chairman, I was joining Beth Lance, Marcia Shaner, and hope that as you're considering the other insurance topics that you have before you, that this might fit in there.
Okay.
As you look at those others.
Thank you very much. Thanks to
Thank you.
both of you. Assuming there's no questions. Who's next? Who's next? As long as you're coming up as Black Hills, do you want your competitor and friend, Mr. Kaysen, to come up and sit beside you just so it can roll seamlessly? Could be a rolling whiteout if we do it.
Mr. Chairman, now I feel guilty because I don't think my other colleagues were interested in coming up, but.
Oh.
Sorry.
Mr. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, David Bush, representing Black Hills Energy. Really just wanted to say that we're happy and looking forward to having the discussion on electricity and any other issues that the committee feels we can be helpful on when it comes to the interim topics, transmission, a lot of issues that are going on out there. So really just wanted to say that we're looking forward to being hopefully having a positive conversation this summer and really focusing on finding some solutions, so.
Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Bush? Mr. Kaysen?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Rick Kaysen with Rocky Mountain Power. Thank you for the invite to come up. It's always a delight to be sitting next to you, sir. I will get with you after this meeting. But I think it goes without saying that Rocky Mountain Power will be active in the interim topic discussions as well. As we continue the discussions, and as you said in the beginning of the 2023 interim topics, we will be looking at a 2-year study and review of electric utility. So again, just to confirm, we will be with you, and again, looking for resolutions as needed, sir. With that, try to answer questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kaysen. Any questions for Mr. Kaysen? I will say to both you and Mr. Taylor in the background that I think this committee is, the 2-year plan that we had turned into be a very accelerated, compressed, and I appreciate the human capital that was developed on this committee. I think there's no other committee in the legislature, I think, you know, and Minerals and Revenue, they both looked at these topics too, but this committee has really come a long way in the utility world, and we ought to take advantage of that. Appreciate it very much. Mr. Taylor, you want anything? Good, okay. Anybody else want to address the committee? Does anybody else want to address the committee?
I believe Councilman Seagrave, he was going to address Mayor Collins's topics.
Wonderful, thank you. And we may have some online testimony? None yet, okay. Councilman Seagrave? Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm a poor substitute for Mayor Collins, but my name is Tom Seagrave. I'm on the city council.
In Cheyenne.
In Cheyenne. We have 2 issues that we're interested in. One has to do with affordable housing and the use of URAs, urban renewal authorities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an expert on that topic, but in order to use a URA, you have to be able to declare a blight. And with new housing, we're not able to do that. So we're asking for you to consider that for this interim. Our second issue is ownership of power. And you'd say, why would we want to do that? We have the opportunity right now to secure grants for solar. And we've learned that cities are not allowed to own those. So we kind of hit a roadblock. And we'd love for you to look at that.
Okay.
We don't want to distribute power, but in Cheyenne, our main issues are housing, power, and water. And anything we can do to help with that would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Seagrave.
Thank you. And again,
let's see if there's any questions for you.
I apologize, the mayor wasn't here, he had a meeting.
We like you better anyway.
He called me 15 minutes ago.
No,
so
we love the mayor, and we love our former mayor. So,
Yes, sir.
anyway, questions for Mr. Seagrave? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just double checking, raise your hand, please, if you want to address the committee right now. Raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any, we don't have anything online, right? Well, committee, back to you. It's quite a, Mr. Co-Chairman, it's quite a bundle here.
It's a bundle, but I think there are some, as we discussed earlier, the desire to have broad topics. I think a lot of that can fall within broader topics.
I agree, and it's a matter of sorting it out and making sure that we can have a 3-meeting interim that's doable. We can't be introducing new subjects at the last meeting unless, you know, because I look at it that everything, it takes at least 2 meetings. And then there's one on here that I think is, if I could just touch base, there's one from Richard Garrett, and it's about legislative process. And this is given at my suggestion, but it's gone to the wrong committee. I was thinking that that would go to the Legislative Tech and Process Committee. So we're going to consider it submitted, but it needs to be discussed in the other committee. And it's about, I'm chairman with co-chairman Zawanisar of that committee, and looking at issues like, are there, from the lobby's perspective and the citizens' perspective, are there things that we could do better in our process to be more transparent, et cetera, et cetera. But if the committee wants to take those things on, fine, but there is a standing committee called Legislative Tech and Process. And I think you're on it, right? Who's on it? I'm trying to remember. There's a couple of people on it, but Mr. Chadwick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just noticing a couple of our representatives have issues here that we did not get to.
Let's hear what they have to say.
Representative Wiley has one.
Well, everybody except him, of course, Mr. Chairman. No. Representative Wiley, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should take up some time and look at education for elections. So just people are more informed and kind of have a hold on everything.
Okay.
Not so confusing.
It's a big area. Who else has things they want to address committee on right now? Representative Ottman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Co-Chairman. I did have a topic on page 11, and what this is it's called anti-SLAPP, and it was a new thought to me a couple months ago, but I really was thinking that it encompassed a lot of the issues that we had dealt with, and then also topics that are present going into the interim. It allows people to speak out without the need to protect themselves from extensive litigation. Pretty much, for lack of a better term, fraudulent lawsuits and things like that. Defined issue, it would, disallow frivolous or unnecessary litigation or harm. And just to have some standards in place in those cases. Let me see, the purpose is to, let me see, I don't want to say it opposite. I'll just read this. In the case of a SLAPP action, which stands for, actually,
I bet S is slander.
something, yeah, oh, I lost my things. Darn it. I lost.
Okay, it's okay.
Hang on there.
So basically, this is a topic about removing restrictions to free speech that may exist in the law. Okay, and if you find more information, would you share it with the committee?
Yes.
And members of the public that are interested?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I do have more information, in fact, and it's pretty intriguing. It's easy to understand once you look at the different questions that are answered, and it is for protection for free speech.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll just leave it there, but I will
Okay.
provide more information, and thank you.
You bet. Senator Scott. Can we get the green light for Senator Scott, please?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I forget where the acronym comes from. I remember legislation on this that I was involved in, must have been 30 years ago or more. And I do recall there was a certain amount of opposition from the legal community.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Maybe you could help Representative Ottman a little bit with this too. Okay, is there any other committee members that want to weigh in on anything? Representative Yin.
So SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. The idea is that it's a lawsuit that an entity uses to chill someone else's speech.
Gotcha.
By using the lawsuit to keep them from speaking.
All right. I'm intrigued to learn more. I really am. Mr. Garrett, we just had a discussion about your proposed topic. So I miscommunicated with you. I was hoping that topic would be submitted to the Legislative Tech and Process Committee, and this is entirely my fault. But we're going to take note of it as being submitted for that committee, and we'll move it on to their side, and I think there might be some folks that would help you with it. So we're not ignoring it, and it has been submitted. We'll make sure that it's duly submitted. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir, Representative Barlow, or Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this isn't on the list, but it's actually been brought to me several times now in the last couple of weeks, is there seems to be certain lines of insurance, property, et cetera, that are under challenge and for availability to folks. If you think about flood insurance in the southeast part of the United States, and fire apparently is becoming a challenge. Having fire insurance in some of our communities in this state is becoming less available. Not affordability isn't the issue, it's availability.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's not on this list, and I'm learning more about it, but maybe we have the insurance commissioner just bring us some reports about, are we having some challenges with just certain lines of insurance and availability to citizens of Wyoming, and is there policy that we can assist with that may assist in that? So anyway, Mr. Chairman, like I said, I don't have anything formed, but it's coming, I'm starting to hear more about it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. It seems to me that's part of the general reporting nature of the Department of Insurance to us is on this issue, and I've had some personal experience with it too. I know it's a real problem in Wyoming, and that the more people are having to go to surplus lines to get insurance that they got for, decades. So I think that's wise. Anything else? I do have something I'd like to present if it's possible. It's it's in the electricity area, and we had various tax bills on electricity. As you know, the Senate passed a bill that would remove the sales tax on electricity for Wyoming customers, with the idea that that was contingent upon a more general tax being placed on electricity. And so there were a couple of bills in the House about taxes. I think Representative Burkhart had one, and Representative Larson had one. We've got basically three committees that are gaining traction in electricity issues. One, of course, is the Minerals Committee, which has been focused on saving coal in a very big way. We have the Revenue Committee, who's intrigued with the electricity issues, and I hope they'll take them up in terms of the taxation. But in terms of what I think we ran into is the industry kind of has better lawyers. And this is not a comment on our lawyers, believe me. We have great lawyers, but they have subject matter expertise, and they've kind of convinced some folks that it wasn't wise to bring this forward this session of getting rid of the Wyoming sales tax, implementing more of a generic tax that would be used, that would also pick up exports to be shared by other states. It relates to the Rocky Mountain Power situation with multi-state protocol. It relates to trying to get other states to pay some of the taxes for the impacts that are happening in Wyoming, and it all comes together. I've talked to several people on the Management Council. I've talked to sponsors of all those bills, and we all have come to an agreement that we need some outside expertise, outside legal and subject matter experts to deal with the situation of constitutionality of a proposed electricity tax, whether it would look like a special tax if we took the sales tax off for Wyoming customers so that Wyoming customers are not harmed, how the tax is best applied, whether it's a gross receipts or whether it's a generation tax, all kind of complicated issues. And certainly not more of a revenue purview than but uniquely we've developed this talent in the Committee on Electricity Issues. And I'm wondering if we could ask Management Council with an appropriation of, say, $20,000 or something to hire experts and just raise the topic there. It has to start somewhere, and I think we're maybe the best to formulate the topic. It may very well end up that the request is shifted to another committee. And we could partner with other committees, or the other committees can certainly handle it. And it could be either minerals or revenue, and that would be absolutely fine. But if we don't define the request and put it on our list, no one else is going to be able to put it together, I don't think. So I'm hoping we might have some leeway to maybe get that request moving forward to hire someone outside. I'm certainly interested in your thoughts on that. Mr. Co-Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like you're wearing your old revenue chairman hat just a little bit there. I do think that would be an appropriate, the most appropriate venue for it.
I agree, and I'm happy to help revenue put it in as their topic. And certainly willing to let management council decide where it goes, and I'm not really trying to advocate it for here. It needs to be decided somehow. We need the expertise. Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I guess as a member of Management Council, I'll chime in. I think I'm supportive of the concept of having some outside expertise, and I would be supportive of Management Council to advocate for that. I don't have any preference on the particular committee. I think we just need to make sure that especially if we have a committee that generates that sort of knowledge base over the course of the year, come next year where we'll have different committees and different people, I worry about having a bill where that expertise disappears in the middle of that discussion. So that's my only concern of it.
I think I agree completely. Yes, down here, Senator Scott, we use that green one there.
Mr. Chairman, I'm intrigued by the idea and have felt for some time we're not getting a proper revenue off the wind and solar generation that we're doing for elsewhere. And I think there's some real possibilities here. There's some issues with exemptions and whatnot that this committee would be particularly knowledgeable about. And I'm afraid, I'm not obviously on management council, but I'm afraid the revenue committee may be overwhelmed with some of the other issues they're dealing with. And I would think that putting it as a bullet point under our electricity study would be a very wise way to proceed on this. I think this committee would probably do a better job simply because I think we'd have the building expertise and the electricity issues involved and would not be overwhelmed by property and sales tax issues the way revenue is going to be.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott. Well, let's draft it up and take a look at it, and perfectly happy to give it off to revenue. I think we all would be, or we could work jointly with revenue or minerals. It's an issue of fundamental importance to Wyoming, and if it doesn't get moved forward, it won't get moved forward. And I just feel like we've been led astray by some industry comments about arguing that it's either unconstitutional or would violate the multi-state protocol with Rocky Mountain Power. And I think we need to dig in deeper. So let's draft it up and see what you think. And I'm happy if it goes anywhere else. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, we open discussion on the interim now.
Yes, we sure are.
Mr. Chairman, I would feel that we really need to deal with three topics. Electricity, obviously. Telecommunications, I think it's a minor topic, but we've got a sunset and we've got to deal with that. And I think we have to honor the Secretary of State's requests in the business area, where you've got fraud, where you've got international potentially abuses. I think all three of his requests, I think you could lump them all together on modernization of our business filing process. And I would think those ought to be perhaps three of our major ones. I wonder if we aren't at the point where we've done elections so much we can give that topic a rest for a few years until we need to look at it again.
Thank you, Senator. Any comment on that? I do note it's very telling that our county clerks aren't weighing in on this and have chosen not to come. And that's by design. I mean, it's absolutely, oh, we got one. Well, we didn't hear from you when we went through the list. We did get a memo from you that basically said you don't want to take up election issues this year. Is that correct? Let the record show. Okay. So, and I'm sorry, you're right behind the post. I apologize. I hate this room in a lot of ways. Anyway, that was telling. So, and it is an election year. Taking up election issues in the middle of an election year can be doubly hazardous. Anybody else? Anybody want to weigh in on our priorities and how it's starting to shake out? Anybody else? Mr. Co-Chairman, should we come up, do the hard work now?
Well, yeah, I think so, Mr. Chairman. I had a similar thought to Senator Scott in terms of lumping all the business, LLC and fraud stuff all in one. I think Representative Stith's topic could even fit under that if we wanted it to. Then you got the telecom sunset, electricity study. I think you got an insurance updates topic as well, and you could.
We have to do that one.
Yeah, you could lump some of the smaller things in insurance if you wanted to, like the insurance minimums. Senator Barlow's availability of insurance concept as well can go under there. So I think that becomes a pretty sizable topic actually by itself.
Okay.
And then after that, everything else is just kind of single topics that we have, and we'll have to decide whether our list is comprehensive enough or big enough lift, I should say, to take on some of the smaller issues like affordable housing, the anti-SLAPP regulations.
So typically what we've tried to do is to package stuff together rather than have 10 separate things in the utility area, just have kind of one big utility umbrella. I think management council is a little easier to deal with. And if you come in with 10 pieces on the utility thing, we know how you guys work, Representative Yen. And so it kind of do package things up a little bit bigger. And this is precisely what we did last year, so that we actually don't come in with too many requests. Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just, a question for you both. Would it be acceptable for you that I provide you that information by this evening? Or this
You bet, and share it with the committee.
Okay, I will.
And any interested folks out there. And then if committee, if you want to weigh in on that, please let's do, okay?
And I would just like to add, I think, and it's just a thought, that it may fit in with the fraud and international abuse area, but we'll see after you look at it. Okay.
And when's management council going to meet? So we don't know, but we've got
a few weeks.
We've got a few weeks, which gives us, it used to be you'd have to go in before the session was out, and that was just terrible, but now we've got a few weeks, so this can kind of percolate a little bit and percolate out there. We kind of come up with our narrowed down requests.
And I think co-chairman will get together before that, so everyone knows the process. We'll get together before that management council meeting, try to firm up what we could see as the most viable presentation to them, and then go and present it.
And we'll share it with you guys. Yep. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So 2 questions. One, in the past, we've kind of been like, hey, here's top 5 for me. You wanting that? Do you want that email of, hey, these are some
I think that's
ideas?
great.
Okay. Second is, do we have dates set yet?
We do have a set of dates. Kelly, or Josh, do you guys have some ideas for dates?
I did.
I remember we came up with some.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so currently on the schedule, we have April 22nd, 23rd in Lander, August 7th and 8th in Evanston, and October 22nd and 23rd in Cheyenne.
Hold on, I have August 8th and 9th.
Or 8th and 9th, sorry, Mr. Chairman, 8th and 9th.
Hold on, now, everybody, we're trying to listen here.
So
They're having fun over there.
April 22nd and 23rd, Lander. August 8th and 9th.
Evanston.
And Evanston. And then October 22, 23 in Cheyenne.
Those chairs in Douglas were really hard. If you would have had softer chairs.
There's that much ad valorem tax, and that's
October is the 22nd, 23rd. And thanks to the co-chairman for being he cracks the whip on the scheduling. I'm Mr. Loosey-goosey on scheduling, so he's really good at it. Anybody else? Well, let's let this percolate and we'll think about it and enjoy the rest of your day. We might have a budget today. Maybe we will. We'll see. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you online.